Howdy, howdy. We are live on a Friday night with no new episode of Trek to talk about this week, but that's okay. We have a whole season of Strange New Worlds, a very popular show, my personal favorite of the modern era of Star Trek shows, and we're going to talk about that whole season.
It's an interesting season too. I feel like there's even the most ardent fan would say there's kind of wild ups and downs and stuff. So, and we'll talk about best moments and character arcs, things like that. What worked, what didn't.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be extra reliant, like the Wrath of Khan. We're going to be extra reliant on our audience here if they want to engage with us as we're talking about our various opinions on season two. We're going to want to hear from you and share some of y'all's thoughts as well if you're joining us live. So, and I see some people already are. There's already folks in attendance. So, Dave, I think I'm ready to get the show started if you are.
Let's do it.
I'm Fathery,
This is Dave.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 255th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new. And tonight we are talking about Star Trek Strange New World Season 2 as a whole, all 10 episodes as one whole thing. So everything from the Broken Circle all the way through Hegemony. And I'm looking forward to getting into that in just a moment. Have to before we get into the main topic, give a huge thank you and shout out to the Tex-Trek Patreon supporters. That's Starfleet, Sohel, Cake is Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Dog, Geek Filter, Earl Grey Trekkie, Quarkspar, Benjinium, Stephanie Durantes, Matthew Averett, Braxton, Chuck A, and our anonymous supporters. Thank each and every one of you so much. We just had a lot of fun in one of our monthly watch parties. I guess last weekend, Dave, we were watching the Lower Decks episode that crosses over with DS9.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Lower Decks crossovers are kind of trendy right now. But Here All Trust Nothing. And then after that, we watched the Prodigy episode, All the World's a Stage. And we were lucky enough that the writer of that episode, Prodigy producer Aaron Walke, was able to stop by and hang out with us while we were watching. So that was a lot of fun. People seem to really enjoy that.
Yeah. Look at the perks we got busting out for people here.
Yeah, so as little as $2 a month, you can come into the Patreon. That'll get you into the monthly watch parties. And we have some additional perks as well if you can afford to be more generous. So check that out at the link in the description wherever you're watching or listening to this. But the collective support really goes. It really adds up and makes a big difference in the content and the volume of content that Dave and I are able to produce, and the other people that we collaborate with. So thanks everyone for chipping in and helping out with that. We're doing our next watch party is going to be September 16th. And, September, we're doing a big celebration of Star Trek, the animated series. So we're going to do something. I think we're going to do 2 TAS episodes, yesteryear and then one other, but I don't know. I don't know if people are in the Patreon and you're going to come to the watch party, let me know what other episode of the animated series would you want to watch. Is there like a particular favorite? Is there one that you haven't seen before that you're wanting to watch with a group? But
Pick Slaver Weapon. Pick Slaver Weapon.
that's my second favorite episode of the animated series. So
Yeah. No,
I'm a
it's
big
an
fan.
obvious one, but like there's other fun stuff, and it would also be fun to pick a weird episode too.
Yeah, there's a lot of weirdness in there.
that would be a good one to chat about and all that.
Well, that's not the only thing happening in September. We are having like the big 50th anniversary on Star Trek Day. We're also getting a new season of Star Trek Lower Decks that we'll be covering on the show. Weekly, the same format we did for Strange New Worlds and all the other current shows. But there's also GalaxyCon happening here in Austin, Texas, September 1st through the 3rd, which is going to have several Trek actors, and I'll be attending. I have to apologize. I told people I was going to be doing a panel there, and there was a miscommunication with some scheduling, and that's currently like not on the schedule. That was largely my fault, so nothing that the people at GalaxyCon did. But that's probably not happening now. But I'll still be in attendance. And Jonathan Frakes, Will Wheaton, Gates McFadden, LeVar Burton, Terry Metalis, Terry Farrell, a lot of Terrys or multiple Terrys. Who else?
That's a huge list.
Someone
That's
else from
big.
DS9. Who was the other one? Who the hell was it? That's gonna really bug me now. Um, well, I'll probably think of it, sometime about an hour after the show's ended tonight. How these things normally turn out, but yeah, so a lot of cool things happening in September. And Star Trek Day, I don't know what's gonna happen. We might get who knows, a trailer for Star Trek Discovery season 5. Might get like some news on the Academy show or something. I don't know, but if anything happens on Star Trek Day, I would love to do a stream and talk about it with whoever's available. So we might be doing something like that on September 8th as well. But I don't think there's anything else in the news or anything else too topical. So, Dave, we got a big collection of Star Trek to talk about, a big 10 episode run. I guess that's kind of small by like legacy Star Trek era standards, but
Sure. It's what is it? More like standard for now.
yeah. Um, but I guess we can talk about that, like that kind of stuff and the format kind of stuff. But yeah, everything that was in season 2. So we're hoping that people that are joining us live will sound off and let us know some things like your favorite moments, your least favorite moments, any episodes that really delivered, anything that really disappointed. I don't know. I want to ask Dave about his opinions and just like we got like such a big variety. So
Yeah,
you
I
know we
think
can talk.
I'd just like first of all like to know just what people thought. Like, good, were you pretty happy or not? And did you like it more or less maybe than season one? The only other season we have to compare it to right now.
So just to I guess refresh season 2 for everyone, I'll just go and mention all the episodes. We don't sorry, excuse me. I'll just go and mention all the episodes. We don't need to go into too much detail describing them, but episode 1, The Broken Circle. We had Klingons back to normal, and the Enterprise gets stolen by Spock. Uh,
Hmm.
for I guess for the first time. Episode 2, Ad Astra per Aspera. That was Una's big day in court. Episode 3, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. That was Kirk and La'an's romantic getaway to 21st century Toronto. Episode 4, Among the Lotus Eaters. That was the memory loss episode on the planet from the cage. Not to be confused with the Discovery episode, If Memory Serves, which was also an episode dealing with memory loss and a planet from the cage, but different occurrence of that. Episode 5, Charades. That was Spock turns human, another Spock and T'Pring family sitcom. Episode 6, Lost in Translation. Uhura sees dead people, including Ghost Hemmer. Episode 7, Those Old Scientists, the famous Lower Decks crossover. Episode 8, Under the Cloak of War, the Don't Fuck with Mbenga episode. And
Yeah,
episode 9, Subspace Rhapsody, the musical. Episode 10, Hegemony, the Gorny finale, as I call it. And that was the season. So yeah, definitely
I see. In the comments, Joanne said she liked the energy of season one better, but loved the character work of season two a lot.
hmm.
Um, And let's see. Jill says she likes episodes with no Gorn or Kirk the most. Very specific.
Yeah, I mean, those were my two big complaints from season one, but
Yeah.
season two, they kind of won me over with Kirk. Uh, I guess Dave, it's just like a whole. If you want to just kind of get things started with an opening statement to kind of sum up your broad impressions of season two, how would you describe it?
Sure, sure. Like we've talked about really all season, it came up in a lot of different ways, but it's been kind of lots of sort of roller coaster ride or ping ponging around with my emotions. I can say that the season kind of got off on a sort of bad foot for me, which, although I like the Klingons, I was not liking the Mbenga Chapel martial arts sequence and stuff, the kung fu scene, even though that would later get kind of a little bit more built, like it would make more sense as the season played out and we saw more of them. But then I got the very next episode, maybe my favorite episode of the season, which was the courtroom one. And so that was like the most consistent thing about the whole season, was that it was kind of bouncing me all over the place.
The most consistent thing was its inconsistency for you.
Yes. But you probably remember, Father, that I at some point said I was officially kind of disappointed in it. This was about at the halfway mark. I mentioned that at some point, or I think I mentioned it to you. If not, I mentioned it to someone else.
Yeah, no, I do remember you saying that. Like the only episode out of like that first five, I think that you liked was ad aspera per as spur. I just said it a second ago. Just
Ad
renamed it.
Astra
Listen
per
to it.
Ad Astra per
Ad
Aspera.
astra per aspera. Yes,
Yeah.
talking is hard
But I
today.
like I liked parts of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, like major big parts of it, and I liked weirdly Among the Lotus Eaters kind of, or I liked it more than I expected. But then the second season like kicked into big time high gear, I think, and I got really won over with musical episode,
Hmm.
crossover episode, the war episode, all that stuff. And it even ended on a kind of a way I like, even though the last episode had something to a few issues, but I was focusing on stuff they got right, and
Let me see.
so I'm gonna like in the end I ended up pretty happy with it.
You know what it was, Dave? You know what it
What?
was about halfway through is I think you were really disappointed in the first episode and then episode five, charades, the
Yeah,
sitcom one. I
that's the
think
one that
that one also like really rubbed you the wrong way.
there were two episodes that a lot of people liked, and I felt really I felt like almost that FOMO, the fear of missing out that you get. That I wasn't enjoying the Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow,
Hmm.
and that one you just said as much as everybody else. And then suddenly like they were just all winners for me in the last half, or at least mostly winners, I guess I'd
Well,
say. And a few of them were some of their best episodes ever.
yeah, I mean that's I guess if you're gonna either start off great or finish great, I think it's better to have like a strong finish.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess
But
I guess
I know that
for
you were a little down on the finale though, Father. So what's your take?
I mean, yeah, the finale. I did dislike the finale, but it was the only episode I did dislike. So as this for the entire season overall, I was thinking about this last night when I was preparing these notes and trying to get my thoughts together, and I guess the conclusion that I came to was I think I like season two about on par with season one. There's some higher highs for me in season two, but there was like I guess a bit more consistency throughout season one that I liked. But in both instances, that there was only one Gorny episode that it was the only one I disliked out of the whole bunch, and there are some things that I like more, and now that I've seen it fleshed out in season two, like Kirk, for example, Paul Wesley's performance as Jim Kirk. But I was working from home today, and I just had like the entire season playing on the background. I was kind of just like half paying attention to it just to refresh it. But I went through like all 10 episodes, and I was just reminded of a lot of these like really great moments throughout the season, and the variety of moments. And as our friend Aaron has called it, SNW, standing for severe narrative whiplash, which I think is is clever and accurate, but I think people's mileage will probably vary on that. But for me, that is a strength, that is an advantage, that is a plus of the show.
Hmm.
My favorite season of Star Trek, I say this all the time, but it's Star Trek Deep Space Nine season 6, where we went from the magnificent Ferengi and all of that goofy shit to the next week we do basically Gold Dukat reciting the white man's burden to Cisco and Waltz in this like really dark, serious episode. And
Hmm.
then we switch from that to comedic Ferengi shenanigans again with Who Mourns for Morn. So I'm fine with that large tonal shift. I enjoy that. To me, that makes the show more fun. That's one of the reasons why this is my favorite of the current batch of various shows that we're getting. And with just like that in mind of season 2 kind of pushing that envelope even more than season 1 of just how willing the show is to commit to, comedy, romance, action, horror, just whatever. And trying to do
Don't
like
forget musical.
and a musical.
Yeah.
I have to say I do I love season 1, but I season 2 edges out just a noticeable bit like it more. I do like it more than season 1.
You know what, Father? I was thinking about them, and I was like, oh, did season one like have like a better average? Like it was like more solid, but season two swung for the fences a little bit more. And I don't think that quite worked as I was comparing. I was like, oh, like season two tried for a crazy musical episode and a crazy crossover episode, but they did have like the fairy tale episode in season one, and like what the pirate shenanigans with Captain Angel and stuff like that. So it's not as if they weren't like doing some pretty wild stuff. And I suppose you could also say it swung for the fences when it did stuff like the really dark episode with the little kid who had to die for the planet to be happy. Um, so yeah, that's not a point of comparison I'm going to use, but I was trying to get my mind around that and see, and yeah, I don't know if there's any one obvious thing. At the end of this, by the way, we should go over before the season started, we had a list of 5 things we want to see, and I got a solid helping of mine, and I don't know where yours ended up,
Oh,
but
do
it
you
might
want
be
to talk
fun to.
about? Yeah, we can talk about that now, or we can do like
Yeah, yeah,
highlights and
we
low
can knock it out real
points.
quick. I've
Okay,
pulled up my list. All
so
right.
if I recall correctly, mine were I wanted to like the Gorn more, I wanted to like Kirk more, I wanted Tholians, I wanted Cybok, and I wanted more characters from like early TOS. Like, excuse me, sorry, I have so much crud in my throat because it's so like dry here. Sorry, so sorry.
It
The
is
the
the one thing we didn't get, Father, we absolutely did not get Cybok. So
Yeah, we didn't get Cybok.
boo.
I wanted Cybok. I wanted those TOS early season 1 characters like people that are in like the cage or like Yeoman Rand or
Or who was the guy who
Riley
was that was the episode of Prodigy we just saw, whose name escapes me already.
Ensign
Um,
Garovic.
Ensign Garovic. That was like
He's
the deepest of deep cuts.
he's from season 2, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean I just wanted them to be like season 1 people because it's like, oh, it makes more sense they would be on the Enterprise before other people. But I guess we didn't get those either. But yeah, we definitely did not get Cybok. I swear someone said Angel was coming back. I guess they
Hmm.
were talking about season 3.
Maybe. But among the other things, did you get the Gorn course correction? We both wanted some version of that, and we actually had like almost zero Gorn, so I thought they were going to pop up more. So I was kind of happy about that, just
Yeah.
since neither of us are loving them. So yeah, the less they appear in, the better. When it did happen, I felt like really they only opened the door for course correction. They didn't really do it, but that was still something I was kind of excited about. I'd say that's a partial,
That
like a
that's that's kind of where I am with it. It's like they didn't do it, but it looks like they might do it in season 3. But I'm not convinced that they will. So maybe.
I'm not either. I can't quite tell where they want to go. They have, if they're playing 4D chess in their interviews, where they really like to emphasize the Gorn are monsters and that they're just going to let them be monsters, and they're doing that so that they can say, have us be shocked when we realize, oh, we hated those monsters, and now we know that there's a deeper reason for it. It's because it's hatchling season on Gorn Planet. How could you want to exterminate them when it's hatchling season? Like, if they're doing that, they're maybe overplaying it, and to the point where I'm like, well, I think they might actually just want monsters. Maybe that's what they want.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, the other popular fan theory that I hear a lot is like, oh, these are like genetically engineered monster Gorn, but there's actually like other Gorn that are like nice and more civilized. And I don't necessarily need it to be like a big explanation-y thing like that, but
mhm,
just uh it's like what you said a long time ago when we were talking about Star Trek Discovery season 1 when we got to the third episode, and you were saying like, Discovery's not really doing what you wanted it to do, so that
mhm,
means it has what it is doing. Instead, it needs to do a really good job, and then you'll still be able to enjoy it. And
mhm.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. It's like quality always wins. I want something from the Gorn that really lines up with what I've just kind of always hoped I would see from them, and
Mhm.
matches up with Arena, because I think that is like a pretty great episode, iconic for a reason episode of Star Trek.
Mhm.
But if they do something radically different and it's super good, I'll still get on board with it. And I had some issues with the scripting in the finale this year. Otherwise, like, they could have potentially won me over. I think if it had just been a bit more I don't if the weaknesses hadn't been so apparent to me. But I look forward to the other episodes of season 3 more than I look forward to their Gorn follow up. So it's not really a huge issue for me, to be perfectly honest.
It will. We're gonna kind of, I guess, find out in that first episode whether that this ends up kind of being going to at least a place that looks pretty good, or a place that where we're kind of disinterested. We'll know in episode 1, and then episode 2 they'll probably be fighting a space god, or who knows what, traveling back in time to the Industrial Revolution. I don't know.
Yeah, or they all turn into puppets. They do a puppet episode.
Yeah, we got to cover all of the stuff. What else did you have, Father? And did your wishes come true?
Well, they fixed Kirk for me. I
Yeah, yeah.
turned around real fast, real fast. Tomorrow, and tomorrow, my favorite episode of the show ever, of all 20 episodes. And
That is still standing as your favorite, Fathery?
mm-hmm,
Oh wow.
mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of half jumping into my list too, which crosses over with yours. What I wanted in my list was the real Kirk, which to me was, Kirk of TOS and the movies, which was a guy who was not quite the caricature he sometimes appears as, or that the Kelvin verse one, the rudderless
Yeah.
Kirk, was. It kind of was too. I wanted a Kirk who actually was not like not a jerk, and who was empathetic, also smart, kind of a little confident, but not a douchebag.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt they came through for me on it, like big time on that. Whether it was Kirk winning at chess, sparring with his brother, and clearly, not quite able to give Sam what he needs, but Sam was also, he's kind of a annoying, and I get why they butt heads. But he was empathetic to Leon and Uhura, open minded to advice from Una. Like, I was like, that's the Kirk I wanted. That's the Kirk I've been needing.
Yeah, the thing I would add to your list, because that was a really great list, but his uh willingness to help and listen and believe Uhura in Lost in Translation, when he really like came through, even though like she was kind of angry and hostile, and
Hmm.
she's having a bad day, to be fair, but when he like tried to introduce himself to her, and but like he was like, oh, something's clearly wrong with you, I'm going to listen to you and try to be as helpful as possible. And I thought that was like
Hmm.
a great way to kind of I don't even want to say like re-lens Kirk
Yeah, yeah.
for
I think
the
that's
21st century.
that's
It's not
fair to
really
say.
reimagining. He's still, it's very much the essence of the guy Roddenberry was writing stories for in the 60s. Um,
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough archetype to bring into the modern world sometimes. The kind of even a guy who like in the '60s was like, oh, he's a brash leader type, who ever commanded everybody with his respect. Sometimes that comes across as just kind of like self-absorbed, paternalistic a little bit, or at times it sometimes comes with a sexist component,
Mm.
and yeah, they've managed to, I think, push those elements away and keep the things that we like about, people. I mean, Pike has it too, but in a slightly different way. But those kind of right stuff type characters brought to the year 2023, and to fulfill values that have changed over time.
And not to go on too much more of a tangent, we'll talk about like the rest of the stuff that was on our season 2 wish list. But what you brought up there about Kirk and Pike, and I love seeing the kind of the compare and contrast, having them both on the show at the same time, because they do kind of, I guess, historically, if you just think of like, oh yeah, it was like a different captain in the cage, but other than that, it's basically like the same. It's like the same show. It's like the same. If Jeffrey Hunter had stuck around, they would have been giving him like the same script. They basically always intended to be the same character. The only reason why Roddenberry renamed him to Kirk was that he's like, oh, well, if Shatner's playing the captain now, I can just use all the footage we shot with Jeffrey Hunter in a flashback episode. We'll just make sure that they're two different characters now. But yeah, it'd be like really easy to just kind of, oh, yeah, like that 23rd century captain of the Enterprise, like kind of just like standard generic heroic
Hmm.
action dude. So, but having them both like, some
Compassion
people
was
I
a
know
big
are,
part of '60s Kirk.
oh yeah, yeah, and that's definitely like a big part of Pike. But I love there being like differences that they point out. I compare it a little bit to Doctor Who, how when they had David Tennant and Matt Smith in a story together, I had always been frustrated. Well, not always, but early on I was frustrated thinking Matt Smith was too similar to David Tennant because it's like,
Hmm.
oh, it's like another young like goofy guy who's like kind of quirky, but and kind of like real flirty with the girls, and it's like it's just too similar. It's like another like young dude, and then when I finally did see them like together, I was like, oh, they're actually worlds apart, and how foolish of
Hmm.
me not to see it until now. And yeah, I got the same thing with having the scenes with Kirk and Pike together there, and I like the notion of like Pike's not a great wartime captain, but Kirk he's a little bit better in that area, and
Yeah, they've allowed the contrasts to come out in a pretty good way. Father Ray, I have to quick diverge to the comments for a minute. There have been questions about the animal behind me, and I must attend to them. This is a cat right here. There he is. He's sleeping soundly, or I'd haul him in front of the camera. Also, I don't know how to switch off the blur
um,
effect right now.
there's
But
a sleeping canine next to me. But
this is that is my brother's cat Wash. The other whose sister cat is Zoe, and if you watched Firefly, you know the deal. But yeah, that's where they're from. That's Wash, and maybe he'll come visit, but I think he's going to be content to sleep. He's a very chill cat. He's a big dumb orange cat. If you've ever seen the big dumb orange cats. um, Father, did we cover everything on your list?
um yeah, I mean the other stuff like we didn't get, no Tholians, no
That's true.
Cybok, and no season 1 character. I guess Scotty's in season 1. So we got Scotty. I kind of would have liked, Kelso. He's an engineer dude from Where No Man Has Gone Before. I would like to see him or Gary Mitchell or Dr. Piper or Janice Rand or, those people. But we got a name drop of Carol Marcus. That was cool. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all on my list. What else is on yours?
Let's see. Well, we talked about I got the Gordon course correct, at least partial credit. Did not get Cybok. Did get the Kirk thing, which was actually my number one thing. Um, the I wanted to see a Klingon D7 kicking ass, and I didn't quite get that, but I'm going to give partial credit there too because the D7s have been featured, or if you prefer, the Katinga has been featured
It
since
danced with the Enterprise in the musical.
and that's like almost like a bonus point because that was ridiculous but very fun.
Do you
Uh,
remember in the season premiere when like they charged their weapons and like you saw like the nacelle like reconfigure to like disruptor mode? Like
oh
that was
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
cool.
that was cool. That's a fair point. The last thing on my list was purely a ridiculous thing, and I didn't get it. I wanted to see Finnegan return, or that is to say, well, yeah, I want to see Finnegan, who presumably graduated the academy and is somewhere out there on a ship. It doesn't have to be. It should not be in an episode with Kirk because we know Kirk hasn't seen him since the Academy. But he could run into the crew of the Enterprise when Kirk is not around, and I want to see that. I
Kirk
feel
could
like he'd
name
be a
drop
good
him.
foil for the characters. But I also absolutely don't expect it. And anyway, that's my list.
It might be more likely like Kirk could just mention him at some point.
No, I need to see him. Father, as I was going through and I was kind of rewatching some episodes too, or skimming through them, and I started making a list of just I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to break it down, but I was just like putting down here's favorite moments, funny stuff, cool stuff, and here's some stuff I didn't like. And I have to say the favorite moments is like a giant ass list, and I kind of stopped at a certain point where I'm just like, this is just going to become like that Chris Farley character on SNL was like, remember that time when Pike flipped open a communicator and he said openings is his favorite part? That was great. Um, I would just be like reeling off all of those things. But that said, I do have a list of like lots of favorite moments, and a smaller list of things where I was like, I didn't like that.
Yeah, well, let's start with like highlights, and then we'll
Yeah.
we'll we'll talk about some low points. But sure, just like favorite moments. Let's just start there. What were some of these favorite moments you listed? And,
Oh,
and people in the live audience, be sure to sound off, and
yeah, I'm
we'll
gonna
read
go with
some
a
of
few
y'all's.
kind of bigger things rather than very specific scenes. Like I want to say, like for me at least, there's a lot of good. Was it Joanne who said that the character work was really good this season? And I could say that like it's kind of been a downside to not have Pike frequently in here. We know he was off. He's actually real life, and Ensign Mount has a kid, and he's taking care of his son. Is it son, daughter?
I I don't remember.
Oh, somebody must know. Let us know in the comments. But he's been doing that, and they seem to have kind of built a lot of the storylines so that he wasn't, he was on call less. But it has been great for the other characters, and for me, the best one has been Leon. I thought Christina Chong, even though I was not in love with Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, I loved the chemistry between them. I liked her getting this character arc. I loved her getting to show vulnerability throughout the season. But also, she was the one who she got the kill on the Gorn, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so she got the kill on the Gorn. She got a great song. She got to really sing her heart out in it.
that really
Um,
stood out when I was just half watching, half listening to Subspace Rhapsody. When it got to
mhm.
her song, I was like, damn, like this chick has some pipes.
Yeah, yeah, it
She's
kind
singing it.
of demands attention.
Yeah.
And then she also got like a great sad scene with Kirk, which brought in some neat continuity about Carol Marcus and stuff. But anyway, um, she's had to kind of maturely handle a relationship that's never happened. It like ran up against like, oh, could something happen, and then it's not, and that was heartbreaking. That scene with Boimler telling her about the future was heartbreaking. So I just want to say she's kind of my like MVP of the season.
Yeah, yeah, she was definitely one of my favorite characters. I enjoyed the most in season two, and not was never disinterested in her from season one, but I was never particularly extra interested either. It was kind
Hmm.
of no strong feeling on her. But after and tomorrow, she like immediately became like I was so concerned with her. Like after that, like the next week in Memento Mori, like or not that was episode 4 last season. Like this was Among the Lotus Eaters. It was
Hmm.
204. But like in that episode, like anytime like anything bad happened to her, like like her memory went away or like anything, I was like, oh my god, this poor girl has gone through so much. Like I felt so sorry for her.
Yeah, yeah. I was just as a quick aside. I was skim watching Lotus Eaters, which if push came to shove, I'm like, is it the weakest episode of the season? Maybe. But I still found stuff I enjoyed in it for sure. And one of it was when that guy, I was watching the scene and I was like, man, what a good scene this is, where Pike is. I forget. Actually, I missed what he was talking about. He was talking about somebody he cared about. It must have maybe Battelle, and
Yeah, she gave him that medallion thing.
right. and then the guest star guy, the guy who was like, a farmer or whatever, kind of laborer for the, on the outskirts of the castle, is said, oh yeah, he's like, yeah, love is something that the forgetting can't take
Hmm.
away. And I was like, this is actually a very touching sequence. I really liked it in an otherwise rather mixed episode.
Yeah, no, that's moment stood out to me today also because I was like, oh yeah, I guess this is like the moment where both the audience and then eventually Pike comes to understand like, oh, there's some like real genuine, strong feelings there
Hmm.
with Batel.
Father, you want to like throw a few good favorite scenes at me?
I mean, just seeing the this might bother some people to describe it this way, but the corrected Klingons, like I'm just gonna
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
I think that's fair. It was a obvious course correction. Uh,
Right. I don't think we're not really talking about like race in the real world or anything here. This is just kind of a visual aesthetic, but it comes with a certain personality set too, maybe. But it's everybody kind of liked old school Klingons, and they changed it. And I know that some
and
people did like
it's like
Discovery Klingons,
you
but
always said, Dave.
not a
Though it's
lot.
like change like quality always wins. If they changed it to something that looked great,
Right,
then
like
they
took sort of the wharf look and then just kind of added some bits and pieces that to like refine it more, make
but
their costumes.
they made them fugly instead. So
Yeah.
we went from like the fuggliest Klingons to I some of the best. And
Yeah,
so that was a big win for
I
me. I
agree.
know
Yeah.
that's kind of a dumb fanboyish thing, but like tomorrow was a big just having that like likable Kirk, just having him like walk around on the sidewalk in Toronto with La'an and their chemistry. That was a big win for me. Just like, oh my god, I didn't think I would ever really accept this guy as Kirk, and now I'm really rooting for him. So that was a huge win. Uh, Charades, honestly, I liked Spock's struggle in that episode. I think just I thought that whole notion of like, yeah, being human is really hard, and I think that was like a relatable story that I don't know, I thought was I thought was maybe just like hit me like the time, like I wanted to commiserate with someone else experiencing the difficulties of human life. But
Sure.
uh
I was rewatching that episode, Father, and sorry to say overall I was not much into sort of human Spock, slightly emo Spock, but in those moments where they kind of veered more serious and less comical, the him talking to Amanda especially and defending her to Prill, that was a great scene.
Yeah. Yeah, that moment when it's a bit subversive because you think like, oh, they pulled off their charade, they pulled off their scheme, they successfully completed the ceremony under the
Hmm.
guise of Spock still like a Vulcan, and they didn't need to do that at the end, but it's just it makes the victory so much more sweeter when it's like, by the way, bitch, you're totally wrong with all of your prejudices, and it's totally unacceptable the way you disrespect my mom, and
Hmm.
humans can be like really awesome too.
The Kelvin verse had the kind of short, punchy version of the scene when he kind of tells off the Vulcan
Yeah.
science counselor or whatever. But this was like this is the one where they did a sort of more thoughtful version of it, where instead of Spock just basically giving him the bird, he's like, "I'm going to tell you why you're wrong," and that's really cool.
They also give us that moment of Chapel having her big victory over the asshole Vulcan professor who
Yeah, yeah.
denied her acceptance to that fellowship, and when she's like,
Let's
oh, I had like this other like really awesome accomplishment, and you'll just have to read about it in my paper.
yes. But let's pause for just a sec, Father, and like talk about Chapel's story. Where have you landed on it? Does it feel believable to you? Did you think like are you still enjoying her interactions with Spock? A lot of relationships went wrong this season. Now that I think about it, like things were getting a little well, both more serious and more rocky with Battelle and Pike, and but like with her potentially on the chopping block for dramatic purposes. Leon didn't get hers. Spock and T'Pring are on pause, and Chapel and Spock only kind of happened. What do you think about all that, or
I
specifically with Chapel?
I mean, I really like. Chapel and Strange New Worlds. It was something I didn't know going into season one that I needed. It was like this, like, oh, sassy Chapel who's actually like a fleshed out dimensional character and not
Hmm.
just the what little they gave Majel to do back in the 60s. And she
Hmm.
gets a little bit more to do in the animated series, but still not, a ton. Definitely no like deep exploration or anything, and not much personality.
And she
So
also didn't quite get to like save the day the way she has a few times on the show.
I really like the way that they built onto that in season two, and or the way they continued to give that to us. I really buy into like the relationship with Spock, and I don't know if it's just because like these are like two of my favorite characters, and I like seeing them together. But I like emo Spock. I love like like the sad boy who just wishes he could just like hug his mom. But I've always really connected to that character, which I know I'm not alone by. That's like the most like boring, mundane, typical Star Trek fan opinion to be like, I like Spock. I think Spock is neat. But
You're so basic,
yeah,
Fathery. I'm
yeah.
a Finnegan man.
But I like their relationship, but I can't really say like why. Like I don't know like okay, what part of their like I get like Chapel like she like genuinely like has feelings for Spock. She like really like cares about him. When he got turned all human and it was a bit like easier for her to communicate with. She was like, "No, like I want him like the way he really is.
Mm.
I'm in love with the person he actually is." But like I don't really know like why, like I don't really like so it's just
But
uh
I think one thing, something I like about Chapel, she seems to. You're hitting right up against it. She earnestly cares about Spock, and like sometimes when we see the people who are close to Spock, it might be somebody who connects with him on like a science level. I'm talking in all the other shows that he's ever been in, movies and everything. He's like, it's like, oh, they're intellectuals and really really smart science minded guys. But like it seems like somebody like McCoy gets too frustrated with him, and Kirk, obviously cares about him, but they butt heads enough. It seems like Chapel was like, I like who you are. I like that you're
hmm.
kind of aloof. That's okay. I'm not holding it against you, and in fact, it's something that's kind of likable about you. She talks to him just like a friend, like you see more extended conversations with her probably than anyone else, except maybe like Una when they were stuck in the elevator.
Yeah, I think you reminded me why I buy into their relationship so much. But she's like or I don't know, maybe I'm just seeing what I want to see, but she comes off she's a bit more of like the well what you would a lot of people describe themselves as like a brat where like in a romantic relationship or sexual relationship where
Hmm.
they're kind of like they want to they want to have like a more dominant partner, but they'll kind of do things to like bother them so that they'll
Yeah,
eventually
yeah.
like build up a I guess like a punishment for it.
Right,
But
it builds up this kind of like tension and connection that
yeah,
will have an outlet at a more intimate time.
but I think Spock is like a good target because he's supposed to be like cold and not reacting and stay like very calm about everything. So if
Hmm.
you are like if you do have like that kind of like bratish personality, you'd be like, oh no, I'm gonna get a reaction out of you. And
Right. It makes for kind of a fun tension between
yeah.
them. Do you think, Fathery, that like how do you feel that like did she do him wrong in any way? I've had
Yeah,
one or two
totally.
friends.
No, yeah, she totally did. Like he gave up his engage. He gave up like his whole life.
Now that engagement was like on pause on its own, wasn't it?
Well, it was T'Pring. T'Pring was the one who asked for that because he didn't tell her about his humanness.
Hmm.
He said like, well, it's because Vulcans have a hard time lying, and I didn't want to make it hard for you. And she was like, "That's bullshit. Like you did it because like you didn't really trust him." But also like T'Pring has her suspicions about Chapel.
Right,
They've
right.
conveyed that with a couple shots of her like staring at the two of them, like, "Oh, I think something might be going on there." But yeah, I think that I think Spock could have put up more of a fight to Pring walking away if he
Yeah. I,
I think he was making a choice there, and yeah, it's
I
like Chapel. Yeah, I think
You know what I hope, Fathery? I hope that they, have a little bit of retrospect in like subsequent seasons when she returns after her fellowship, where she kind of will look at things and she can kind of look at it from a little distance, and I think that she'll find that what I think she always felt like she was a bit of a second choice for Spock. Like Spock was, picking her because T'Pring kind of was off the table for a while, and that just prompted him, or because he had these sudden emotional bursts and he was not quite in his right head. And then so when Boimler told her, yeah, there's no record of any of that stuff, and he's not known to be a fun guy like he seemed to be around you, that I think her fears kind of collapsed and she was maybe too quick to push him away. Now, the show didn't quite articulate that, and that's why I want her to circle back to it at some point. I want him to talk about it maybe later.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I'm sure they're gonna talk. And I think Spock could have been like a little like less pissy and had shown some better communication skills towards Chapel after she like decided to leave the ship. Uh, but yeah, I definitely I do feel more sorry for him than her. But I
Fair
get where both
enough.
of them are coming from, and yeah, that's another like big moment is when Boimler does spill the beans and doesn't even realize he's doing it, and it's it felt so real and so like unintentional. Like you feel sorry for Boimler too when you watch that scene because
Sure,
you're like,
yeah, yeah.
oh, he realized he screwed things up and he really didn't mean to, and now
And
he feels bad.
most of his goofs were kind of honest to Worf or whatever, like kind of
Yeah,
low level goofs. And then that one was kind of like, oh, I actually hurt somebody. Um,
yeah.
Father, can I reel off? Do you mind if I reel off just a few other little favorite rando
Sure.
scenes?
Go for it.
Spot getting the harp from Mbenga. Um,
Even though
uh,
we already saw it in his quarters in season one, but
sure, but it was kind of a neat moment. And
yeah, yeah. No, I love that.
on the same fan wish fulfillment thing, the low key but cool meeting of Kirk and Spock. The shaking hands introduced by her unexpected because it was that scene seemed like it was about Kirk and Sam kind of arguing, but then Sam stalks off. You see Kirk and kind of Spock kind of commiserating, like, oh yeah, Sam's kind of a doofus, and then Uhura's like, oh hey, you guys meet each other. I
Can I tell
loved
you
it.
some quick behind the scenes info on that?
Hit me.
So at Star Trek Las Vegas, Paul Wesley's not able to talk about, the shows or mention any of the shows he's worked on, so he had to be careful how he worded this.
Hmm.
But he was able to talk about, like working with other actors, and he just talked about on a show I was on with Ethan Peck, there's a moment where our two characters have a conversation and we're sitting at a table while the camera pulls away from us. So we know what he's talking about, right? He just had to describe it that way.
Right.
But then he says, so as the camera's pulling away, I'm just trying to tell like the dirtiest, most raunchiest jokes to Ethan to try to get him to break character and show some emotion and laugh or smile or something. And he's just trying to just sit there stone faced and take it all. And that's what's actually going on as that camera pulls away. So I loved hearing that because I was like, that is so like Shatner and Nimoy. That like they clowned around like that together.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Shatner would try to like prank Nimoy and stuff. So I thought that was like cool to hear. But apparently, like Paul Wesley, he's kind of like he's like the class clown on the set. But like everyone like loves him. They like working with him. But he's kind of a they were saying like some of the actors are like it's kind of weird to see him in character as such like a straight laced Boy Scout. Because we're used to him being like such a sounds like he's more like the Finnegan on the set, but not in an asshole way, and like a
Right,
like
right.
a charming
That
Ortega's way, like the like
that way that Ferris Bueller gets forgiven for everything.
I suppose. But as you were saying with your list of other highlight moments.
Sure. All right. The smiling Hemmer ghost. I liked zombie scary
Oh yeah.
Hemmer in the moment, but it was heartwarming to see him at peace in his way. The Klingon boy band.
That was a big one for me too.
Yep. On the serious level, oh man, this was something else. What was the wartime episode called?
Under the Cloak of War.
And under the cloak of war, when Mbenga just he clears the buffer so Chapel doesn't have to make the call. Man, what a scene!
Yeah.
Love that sort of just dramatic moment, which they didn't overemphasize. It's just that kind of hits you in the moment, and it's so that was a dramatic moment I loved. Let's see. Let's do a few more. I like that they mentioned the temporal Cold War and stuff like that, changing the eugenics war timing. That's a pure fanish thing, but I love a little explanation like that. Um, let's see. Oh man, there endlessly good bits from the crossover episode. Those old scientists. The serious bit with Una finding out the truth about her pinup poster. But also funny stuff like Boimler saying he can track the Orion ship, but they have to all turn around and not look at what he does. Um, like I said, this list is too long to probably go through all of these because I just started making a list of fun stuff. Even things like the crew just having lots of. We brought this up once or twice. There's lots of scenes of the crew members having like drinks in their, not tin forward, whatever it is. What is the name of
The
their?
the port well, they have the port galley and they have the mess hall, but they always stayed in the mess hall until like episode 6 or 7, and then they started using the port galley. So
Okay.
I don't think they've ever gone back to the mess hall. Have they? They might only use the port galley now, but
Yeah, but I don't think I'd even noticed the difference, Father. But yeah, it was just nice to see these downtime moments. It makes it feel like they hang out together, have some drinks together, get drunk together. Sometimes hang out with Boimler down there, and then kind of prank him a little bit. Who was that? Ortegas and Chapel, I think.
yeah. Yeah, when they're teasing them, giving them a bit of a hard
Um,
time. Uh
but
Jill
yeah, that's kind
47's
of my highlight reel there, or some of
Jill
them anyway.
Jill 47's pointing out that she's one of the highlights for her was that Orion captain from that episode.
He was a good character. He was like this kind of what would you describe him as? Was he low key kind of sleazy? But like also kind of legit wanted to be known for something more. I liked his delivery too. Um,
Yeah, he was kind of he was an intimidating bad guy, but he was also like he wasn't malicious, you know?
right, right. He's not like one of these vengeful guys. I see. Yeah.
He commands a bit of respect though, just the way he conducts himself. He's got like a bit of charm, you know.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, they should. I always like the notion of characters recurring, whether they're kind of major characters or minor. Somebody which I feel like Captain Angel, who could be fairly major if they wanted almost their own, Harry Mudd, to the recurring character, or but as minor as that, if he showed up again, I'd be down for it. I see that
um
Cake is Eternal in the audience was excited about the return of Clint Howard. What was
yeah.
his rank? What was he on that planet?
He was Commander Buck Martinez, I think was the last name.
Okay,
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, he seemed a bit shell shocked with his like I'll run it up the flagpole and see if anything quacks, or those
Hmm.
types of remarks. But yeah, he was also like pretty likable. um I guess out of our cast, the lead of the show with Pike, I was thinking, like, do I like what they did with Pike in season 2? I was asking myself. And
Sure.
I guess one of the things I was very happy about was that season 1 did something very different, and then with all their Pike obsessed with his fate and his future, and I was so relieved when he kind of accepted that at the end of season 1. I was like, okay, now my hope is that he's come to terms with this, and he's going to kind of move past it and be focused on something different in season 2.
Hmm.
And so extremely happy that came to be true. I guess the thing that they gave him to focus on, the thing to have like a personal arc now, it was his romantic relationship with Batel.
Hmm.
Like, if you are going to live your life and not worry about your future, and just try to make the best of the years that you have, you're gonna go see, you're gonna pursue the serious relationship now. And I was a bit critical of that throughout the season, and they did not do a ton with that early on to get me invested. But towards the end, I did kind of She won me over a bit in her last couple of appearances. I guess like seeing her, sing about like having to cancel their vacation, and then like I guess the stuff at the very end in the Gorney finale, I did kind of
Oh, he didn't want to be picked up. I have picked up Wash just to show him to the audience, but
okay.
he seems like he would like to go off. Joanne said he's had a nap, took a bath, and is off to an adventure. And I think he wants to go off on the adventure and not be shown.
Well,
He's otherwise like a very gregarious cat. Sorry, Father, I didn't mean to interrupt
no,
you.
my work computer keeps like I keep getting like ions there because I work for a lot of insane morons that
Sure.
I'm gonna go mute that computer while Dave talks about some of the characters stuff he liked with the characters in season two.
I'm gonna continue for just a second, Fathery, and mention the Pike stuff with Battelle. I felt like, for me at least, the Pike is a guy who clearly has, I guess, what you might call commitment issues, and I think that I felt that the show kind of realistically portrayed him as tiptoeing up to it. He's a guy who probably would be more comfortable with the sort of passing ships in the night, friends with benefits kind of relationship, and has had to struggle to kind of get used to something a little bit deeper. So they don't always necessarily articulate it so, but that does seem to be like, in that sense, I feel like his arc is realistic in this season. Um, did you catch any of that, Fathery?
No, but
It's
I'm
okay if you didn't.
sure it was lovely. I'll hear
I
it in
was
my
just I
edit
was
list
just
though.
wrapping up talking about Pike and Battelle for a second. Um, let's what are the other major arcs? Let's see.
And
Oh, Uhura. Let's talk about Uhura for a second.
yeah, before we do, I just want to point out Joel is saying I have not been saying bills and bows as much as I thought I would. So yeah, let's bring that back from talking
Wait,
about
what was that?
Clint Howard in Under the
Right.
Cloak of War. But yeah, Uhura, I continue to think like, okay, Strange New Worlds totally justifies its decision to make Uhura a regular on the show because yeah, we know basically nothing about her despite her being a part of the Star Trek franchise from the very beginning. So here we had like a couple like big Uhura moments. The Lost in Translation episode, very Uhura centric, and then the musical. The musical I think was pretty well rounded with like it kind of leaned into like the whole ensemble, but
Hmm.
it definitely gave Uhura the I think the best moments.
Sure.
Although
It really
Spock had
focused
the
on.
best song, but Uhura was there, so her presence made
Uh,
it even better.
the I don't think Spock had the best song, but I don't know which one I would necessarily pick over it. I'm kind of wishy washy on favorites on that one. I like a lot of them. Maybe it's kind of changes with the moment, but yes, that Uhura got the spotlight as the kind of the communications officer. At least the one she is the person who kind of brings the ship together. It's almost like she lost her family, and so she brings this found family together. Almost. I mean, I don't think they quite put it this way, but almost
Mm.
feels like it's a way she almost honors her lost family. So that's kind of neat. Um, but yeah, that was it was also, and it was a celebration of all things Trek too. That big finale song was like just a love letter to Trek too. Um, but yeah, so and her arc was, she kind of was able to process her loss, continue to accept her role on the Enterprise. So now she seems like in season one, half the season she was like, I don't know if I'm in the right place. Well, if it wasn't cemented before, it's cemented now. She's
Yeah.
she's Enterprise ride or die.
Yeah, and it feels like she's had a pretty like organic trajectory, and
Hmm.
what they set up in season one, it seems like a continuation of in season two. Whereas like Mbenga's backstory, I like Mbenga as like the badass special ops can like kill you instantly with his eyes closed and one hand tied behind his back because I think that
Yeah.
that really like sets him apart from the other Star Trek doctors of like the different shows, and it's kind of it's interesting to see like, oh, he wants to be about saving lives, not taking lives. And uh I think a lot of that stuff works. My only issue with it, I guess, was in the initial episode of the season, which we
Right.
talked about it being kind of dumb and schlocky there.
We
However,
had no
there's
context at the time, and
right,
so I do
and that's
think that
part of
was
my
kind of
criticism here. Like, like none of this was set up in season one. Like, it's believable to me. It's like, okay, like we kind of start getting into it on in like the 11th episode, but it does feel, a bit like sudden and apparent. And um like
Joel in the
now that
comments
go
says
ahead.
he wants to see Uhura watch more Hemmer how-to vids next season. I would like to concur with that. By the way, I just
Yeah,
wanted to.
like and subscribe to Hemmer's YouTube tutorials.
That's it. um, so yeah, we had Umbega's kind of dark history revealed, and there's sure to be some fallout from that, including his possible demotion from chief medical officer. Could come from the fallout of that.
Yeah, we have no idea
Um,
how that's gonna happen, but
Father, she didn't have like a big arc because it all kind of happened in episode one, but there was little follow-ups, or sorry, episode two. But Una also had some notable scenes. I thought great stuff in the trial episode, and then followed up by some nice afterwards in those old scientists, and just kind of in general touching on that. I would have liked more of her, more Tegas. Which, if we're gonna, hey, in a minute, let's talk about a few things we didn't like, including maybe that Ortegas didn't quite get the episode she wanted.
yeah.
But I do want to like salute. I thought they did some, even though there was really only one full episode for her. I thought they did some very good work with Una.
She's still a character to me that I feel like they're not 100% sure what they want to do with, but I feel like they have like a better idea now than they did in season one. Uh, but it felt like she took like the back seat a lot in season one, and then they do give her like a huge episode early on here with episode two. But after that, it's kind of like her presence is sometimes, I don't know, weirdly absent.
Yeah, it's Joel has suggested a dark video, dark Hemmer how-to video that Captain Battelle could watch. So you've been made a breeding sack. It's messed up, man. But
Well,
yeah, I
we
agree.
know Hammer's solution to that because we saw him demonstrate that.
Yeah, that's right. His solution might not be the best on this one, if you can avoid it. But yeah, Una's a little bit of an enigma sometimes. I feel like the writers are struggling a little bit, like they did with Terry Farrell in DS9, and um, her advice thing to Kirk: connect with your crew, and I forget what else she said in that. There was some other notable thing. But I kind of hope that season three, then, that we actually sort of see her. Maybe it makes sense for her character, having kind of come out as Illyrian and gone through this, that she would kind of change a little bit how she interacts with people. So they have an opportunity, I think. They had it in the season and they didn't quite take it, but I think the opportunity is still there to, especially after her giving advice to Kirk, to show her getting more comfortable with the crew and figuring out how she's going to carry herself on the ship. So I really hope that that's a thing in season two percolating. Doesn't need to be a major plot, but it should be a notable subplot, I would say.
Yeah, one of my criticisms of the show, if we're gonna kind of like start transitioning towards like the low points of the season. If anyone in the live audience still has like some highlights they want to point out, please sound off, and we'll try to read some. But if everyone got all those out of your system, we'll focus on the low points. But one criticism I've had from season one is that it's a very like human ship. It's a very human cast. It's not alien enough. It's not like enough strange new. And I felt like we got a bit of that last year with Hemmer, and then losing him, and I like that they have Carol Kane as a Lanthanite, but she
Hmm.
still looks very human. And but I do like when they kind of lean into her history as a Lanthanite. I was disappointed we didn't explore more of that or get more of that, and hopefully we get more into that in season three. I hope she sticks around for a while throughout season three. But with Una, I think they really need to lean into her Illyrian nature a bit more. Like show
Hmm.
her like get injured and have to like regenerate with like the glowy effect, or use like her super strength when she like carried that unconscious Hemmer out of the transporter room, and do more of that stuff, because otherwise it's a very human show. There's not a ton of
Hmm.
alienness to it.
I bet it must be an impulse on the part of writers to really kind of want to write almost everybody as human. It must be tough to kind of be like, all right, we got to really like think what would it be like
Um,
to be that
they
Vulcan
need to they
person?
need to lean into what Deep Space Nine was doing, and being like, yeah, we're gonna have like these widely diverse
Hmm.
characters. They come from different worlds, different philosophies, different backgrounds.
The interesting thing though is like if you took somebody like on Deep Space Nine, like um what's his name, Garrick, who you would always see him kind of debating sort of ethics and stuff with why can't I say it, his lunch buddy
Bashir.
Bashir. um but Garrick, it's still he was still very human in the sense that he seems like someone who kind of comes from a fascist country and who's sees the value in those in that morality, and is like, well, obviously this is the way it should be. It's still reflective of human things. We can understand someone who
Well, that's
has
fine. You can like have it be more alien, but still be rooted in
right.
in
Yeah,
real
that's my
life
point.
thing,
Is aliens are still reflective of humans, so I
especially
think,
in Star Trek.
especially in Star Trek. Yeah.
Yeah, we explore humanity through aliens. We explore today's humans through future aliens. But yeah, I mean, like Deep Space Nine, for example, though, you put like Garrick, Quark, Odo, and Worf in a room together, and you're gonna have a more interesting scene, I would say, than if you have like four human characters in a room together.
I agree. That's something that they should, you know, as a reflection of TOS, it kind of makes sense that it's a little more alien light, but it's one of the advantages we should have in our sort of modern FX times with their pretty good budget
Sure, and
to
even
do.
even TOS didn't feel as human because they were coming up with all like this weird alien stuff for Spock, like all the Vulcan world building and all of that stuff. It was they were coming up with just new stuff, so it had to be fresh, but
Yeah.
now that stuff is hyper familiar. I would say Vulcans are probably the least alien aliens.
Right, right. We're actually used to the idea now. And
Yeah, Vulcans and Klingons are pretty like they're super iconic, but yeah, we've seen a lot of both of them.
I'd say it's interesting. Like as far as like how we can relate to them, Vulcans have a similar philosophy to like Greek Stoics, and Klingons. Any kind of warrior culture seems is reflected somewhat. And Earth has lots of different warrior cultures, is reflected somewhat in them. So, um, uh, Joanne was just mentioning in the comments, she'll never forget Una picking up Hemmer like a rag doll. It's maybe, I believe, a literal rag doll, possibly in that scene.
Yeah, that was they had like an Endorian dummy that she
Yeah.
carried. Like I guess I saw. I guess that was the thing they had on display in Chicago at Star Trek Mission Chicago. Um, what about like your disappointing episodes? I know that we've talked about a
Sure.
couple. You had issues with uh the first one with
Right.
the Broken
So
Circle.
yeah, Mbenga and Chapel fighting, but kind of like they brought up those drugs kind of like without really contextualizing them, showing sort of a disadvantage. It's not what I wanted from those characters. Now they would go on to do good things with them. They would and like the fallout of the PTSD of it stuff was fantastic. Towards the end of the season and under the cloak of war, but yeah, at the time it did not hit right. Um, I Here's a small thing, but Leon leaving little baby Khan with a gun. I don't think anything is going to be really made of that, but it was just one of those things. Where it was like, did nobody on the set think that maybe they should have her not do that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they just wanted her to just like leave it behind, but
Yeah, I if she
it looks dumb when you see it.
yeah.
But
Um,
I don't think much. I like people were like, "Oh, is that like a big like intentional thing?" It's like, no, I think it was just
right. It's not like, well, Khan was like, well, I was gonna become peaceful, but then I found a gun.
yeah.
um, so I think we can agree Mortagus didn't quite happen.
Yeah, that was disappointing. And not only am I like more Tegas, but I want like a little more Palia. Like we never got like that Palia and Amanda scene.
Hmm.
I guess they figured like they didn't have time for it in charades when they're like, "Oh, Palia's off looking for dilithium," but maybe in season 3 we'll get them together.
Yeah, it's funny because they did with Pike out of the way. They had obviously a lot of opportunity to do stuff with other characters, and they did do some good work. But there still ends up being a few like lost opportunities, and that's Pelea's kind of one of those. She had her moments, but she was still, by and large, a very minor supporting character. Um, let's see. It was a little weird just having Pike out of the season. We know why, but it was still
I
weird.
I actually like that is not like that weird to me. And
Hmm.
again, maybe it's like because I'm used to Deep Space Nine, where a lot of episodes you would have like one quick scene with Cisco, and then you don't see Avery Brooks again the rest of the episode. But I think it was just because like they kind of front loaded that stuff. I think if it was like spaced out throughout the season, it wouldn't even be like a talking point for most people.
You know, normally Pike just does get more screen time. Like, he is out there negotiating with the aliens and doing a lot more stuff. But even in those episodes, like where he was like dealing with the Orions and those old scientists, like that was a very ensemble episode.
Hmm.
I think it wasn't like I don't think it's a major weakness. It's just odd. That's kind of more of an oddity. But because the show has kind of built itself around these episodic style, that's why I think it works okay.
Yeah, and honestly, it's still very true to the show they set up in season 1. Like we talked about the Elysian Kingdom, for example, when Pike is just kind of like that traitorous, cowardly toady, and has a
Yeah.
pretty small part. And we were saying how they never ever would have even considered doing anything close to that in the '60s with Shatner. They'd be like, "No, he's the lead of the show. He has to be written as like the big hero, as the big like iconic dude who gets the most screen time and has the most lines." That's just the way that we produce television, and but yeah, like even in season 1, they were willing to put Pike in the back seat and put the spotlight on someone else at times.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I can't disagree with it. Um, Father, some of my things that I didn't like are things that other people liked. Um, and I know this to be the case. I thought, we talked about Spock stealing the Enterprise. It
Mm-hmm.
makes it sound like the Enterprise getting stolen is kind of this. Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just everybody's stolen the Enterprise at some point. I didn't
Yeah, I
like
didn't like
his.
that.
I didn't like his. I would like the ship to go now thing.
Oh, I gave up on that. We lost that
I
fight a
know,
long
I
time
know,
ago.
but it still stung a bit. I didn't like. I wasn't in love with emo Spock in charades. Um, and I didn't like that episode was. I thought that like the second sort of major Spock to Pring episode, and that was also a comedic one. When they could have shown a spotlight on Vulcan culture and allowed it to be a little bit deeper instead of just kind of having them be the kind of the bad
Hmm.
guys of the episode. Like, oh, they represented kind of a certain prim and proper stuffiness that was just beyond the pale. Um, but again, I know people liked those episodes a lot. They
Yeah,
just, for
I love
me,
charades. That's one of my top three. That's up there with Tomorrow, 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 and those old scientists and charades were my top three, I think.
what about some of the what are some of the things that like left you cold fathery or that you didn't like?
I guess my bottom three would be the Broken Circle, Among the Lotus Eaters, and then the very bottom would be Hegemony, the finale. But Hegemony's the only one like I disliked. Like
Mm.
Like as far as like Among the Lotus Eaters, I thought that was just okay. It didn't really have like strong feelings on it one way or the other. The Broken Circle, it had like some real dumb stuff in it, but overall, it won me over by the end of the episode, and I had an okay enough time with it. I'd say it was fine. And then everything else I liked. So I didn't have like a ton of like low points. There's every now and then a bit of like frustrating moments, like you were talking about, like when they call like D7s Katingas, and I guess that's like a interchangeable term now, which Voyager already fucked that up a while ago. So I guess it's just doubling down on that. But
Hmm. Keep
um,
talking, Father. I'm just letting this cat out because he's meowing.
yeah, go for it. Uh, but for the most part, it was a really strong season. So I kind of have a hard time coming up with any complaint with substance that isn't just like a kind of fanboyish nitpick. So
I mean, that's pretty good. And as I was looking at these, I mean, it is stuff that I'm not some of mine were, I guess, for me more than mild complaints, but the list was pretty small, and I like left a bunch of stuff off of my list of like cool things I liked. So yeah, that's pretty all right.
we can turn to the audience for some more complaints. I know Cake is Eternal is saying that 10 episodes just isn't enough.
Yeah.
I see that Jill 47 says every moment that Kirk was on screen, she was missing Pike. So Paul Wesley might have won me over, but not Jill 47.
Jill, I'm curious. Is it like the portrayal, or do you just feel like Kirk is kind of an interloper, and like this is, they're kind of like doing fan wank when they could be showing the crew, Pike's crew? I'd be curious to know your thoughts on that.
She also says that T'Pring's father was not stuffy and did not like you lumping a Tevet in there
He was a doofus.
with yeah, he was, but he was I don't like for me the comedy worked in that episode. I was like on board and laughing the whole time,
Yeah.
and I was also just like really on board with kind of Spock's emotional journey at that
It is
point.
funny
So
how like you can be like kind of get on board something quickly or not. I was very quickly on board those old scientists, but yeah, comedy's pretty subjective as it turns out.
totally. Um, but yeah, if we've depleted all the like the low points, I guess we can ask. On that note, on like the comedy stuff, there was a ton of humor. Were there any like
Hmm.
particularly like just hilarious moments that we haven't covered yet? We've mentioned a
I
couple.
I would like to call out. This is a Kirk scene, and Kirk and Uhura. Oh, Sam. Oh, Sam. I think that was Kirk and Uhura.
Yes, yeah, that was
And
in Lost in
man, that
Translation.
was so funny. Broke me up.
Yeah, they have a lot of good stuff in that episode because then eventually when Uhura says hurry this along, Lieutenant Kirk. And then Jim and Sam both say, yes, ensign at the same time. And you're like, she was clearly talking to me.
Yes. Um, oh, real quick aside, Father, have you been enjoying Sam's character? I have.
Yeah, and like on the subject of comedy, I think he's a comedic asset. I guess mustaches make everything slightly funnier. You know,
He reminds
but
me of what's his name of I think I know I've mentioned this before of Sam Rockwell's character in Galaxy Quest.
yeah, no, people
Uh,
have been pointing that out from the get go. I think
sure.
that got memeified early on with Strange New Worlds, but his
Oh, that's right.
introduction was funny. His introduction in the premiere was kind of a gag because they're like Lieutenant Kirk will be around later, and you're like, oh my god, are they going to introduce Kirk now in the first episode of Strange New Worlds? And it's like, yeah, we're getting Kirk, but not the one you're thinking of. So. And it was something I said when they were doing Discovery. I was like, you know what they should do? They should have Sam Kirk show up, have like the scientist dude show up on Discovery, and they should honestly just like give the guy a mustache, just to be like, yeah, like he always had a stash. And they never did it on Discovery, but they did it on Strange New Worlds, the first episode out of the gates, and he's still around in season 2. He had like some funny moments in charades, the Spock being like, "I will end you, Kirk." Like I like that. I love that, like part of like what they bonded over, just because it does feel like such like a real life thing. Like a lot of conversations would start with like "Oh, I work with your brother," and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, that guy is such a jerk," and like, "Oh, it's funny you mentioned that he kind of is. Oh, really? You think so?" Like, yeah, I mean, like he just rubs me the wrong way. The other day he was doing this, and you get like a conversation, and eventually that leads into a super iconic friendship, and those men go on to do great deeds and save the
Hmm.
universe and all of that. So,
But yeah, and it's something that Trek, being kind of a pretty optimistic show, doesn't show too often. But I like when they're kind of human like that, and people bond over maybe being a little judgy there and stuff like that. Uh,
honestly, if
Nothing
Sam
wrong with
Kirk
that.
if Sam Kirk is what brought Spock and Kirk together, then like he's such an important person in like Star Trek history.
Tell that to his family, fathery.
To his flying fried egg that kills him.
Sorry, a pancake got me. Um, Everybody, several people have mentioned the Boimler power walk in the comments, by the way, as
Yeah.
comedic gold. And Jill mentioned also his shriek, or shrieks, I should say, plural.
Yeah,
Um,
Joanne laughed at all the hot Spock lines,
that was that was on my list. The Boimler, or I'm sorry, Boimler Mariner.
Mariner.
Hotspot agrees with
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
Yeah,
fangirling out, much like how Jadzia Dax did when she went back in time and saw Spock and was like, "Oh my God, he's so hot in
yeah.
person." So
Yeah, I kind of, it's slightly meta in the way that, like his kind of hotness wasn't super acknowledged in the old show, but it was, I guess, through Chapel and other things, but certainly it grew in fandom, and this feels like a little bit of a reflection of how fandom kind of caught up with the notion that you could be a nerdy kind of oddball hot guy, and but I like that they're embracing it. I think it's good. Oh man, Cake is Eternal did the mention the Riker
yeah,
line from
that was
Boimler
good.
as he what mounted the saddle, I believe, Riker style.
Yeah, and on the subject of comedy, Scotty is traditionally often had like a bit of comedy built into
Hmm.
his character. And not like a ton. He doesn't show up and he's like, Deadpool cracking jokes with every other line. But we did get that some of that Scotty lightness and kind of like joyful jokiness in his appearance in Hegemony.
Hmm.
Despite it being a very like grim and dark episode, so they were still able to fit. I have a lot of
That's true.
complaints with that episode, but not the levity. I thought they did a good job balancing that in
Scotty
there.
Scotty is often, although like he has serious mode in TOS, and he's off in that often enough, but he often is kind of a character, the same way Dr. McCoy is often a character, and that's good for like just kind of good incidental fun writing. Him popping up and like kind of. Telling that was it Battelle and Pike that they were arguing right in front of him. They can't blame him for like
Yeah,
for eavesdropping and stuff like that. That was good.
yeah, that was great.
Or even being like a little annoyed that they got stuck in his Gordon trap.
And just having Scotty actually played by a Scottish actor.
Big
Um,
ups, big
yeah,
ups.
I think it is inconvenient that he's an actor that's so much younger than Paul Wesley, who's playing Kirk, and it's inconvenient that we have a Kirk that I really like and a Scotty I really like, but unfortunately the Scotty looks younger than the Kirk. But we haven't seen them on screen together yet, and it's not a huge deal. I've enjoyed both of them in the roles, so it's just gonna be awkward whenever they are together if that ever happens.
Yeah. I have to admit, as they've assembled more and more of the Enterprise crew, I start to wonder, if a spin-off show could happen. Even though I don't want necessarily shows that continue to retread that era, but if they were to fill in some more of the seasons, year 4 and 5 of the 5-year mission or something like that with the
Well,
fully assembled crew.
that's when the animated series takes
I said
place.
fill in more. I didn't say that you overwrite it. Did you fill it in?
It'd be hard to do that. So
I don't think it'd be hard at all.
okay. I hope that they don't attempt that because I think it'll be a train wreck, and I don't want to like have like that argument of like, well, does this like overwrite the canon of the original series? And it's going to be like, oh, well, why remake a show that's already available on Paramount Plus? Like, if you want to watch the original series, you can just click on it. Like, then do they need to like redo the next generation, or they're going to be like a lot of people who are like, I can't watch like that old
Nah.
'80s stuff. I want
Well,
like
I won't do a long defense of it, Father. But just suffice to say, I think there's that you can acknowledge and have some fun with some stuff that was mentioned in the animated series. You can also show some big, dramatic, longer form story arc stuff that they weren't able to do in that. You could show the finish of the 5 year mission, and in a big, grandiose way. Now, I don't think it's really going to happen, but I like seeing those characters again, and I'm betting they're probably going to pick some people I like for Chekhov and Sulu before all is said and done.
I know that like sometimes people who work on Star Trek pay attention to what folks are saying on the internet. So just whenever I have the opportunity, I just like
Listen
to
to
say,
me,
please,
Fathery is
yeah,
wrong on this one.
no,
Go with
please,
the fans.
please do not remake any existing Star Trek show. Just make a new show, whatever you do next.
Not a remake. All right, Fathery. Let's move on. What else? Do we have some other stuff we want to hit? Um, uh,
I saw like Jill 47 talking about like the romantic uh side of Spock. Say Spock was her first crush, but that was something like
mhm.
you and I were talking about a couple days ago. Was just like typically neither one of us like we really get into like the the shows that kind of like lean into like the romance and like really try to hook audiences on like the will they won't they of like these relationships and stuff.
We're
But
not big shippers. We don't have OTPs that we're hardcore about and
But
stuff like that.
I do get into that stuff like a little bit. Like I've watched shows like Buffy or Smallville and CW type stuff. So I guess I do have like that element, and I find myself getting like particularly invested in like the relationships in Strange New Worlds. Not as much Pike and Battelle as I brought up throughout the season, although more so towards the end. But much more with Chapel and Spock and T'Pring and Spock. Like both of those. I guess that kind of contradicts each other, but I like both of them. Um, and the La'an and Kirk stuff I also really enjoyed.
Yeah, I guess in retrospect, although if somebody said, "Oh, what's the defining element of this season?" I wouldn't have said like, "Oh, the kind of the harsher side of relationships, the more difficult struggles." But that was a could argue it's a recurring theme, and I think that they've continued to handle it pretty well. Where consider T'Pring, one-off character in the original series, mostly largely portrayed in just the pure context of that episode as villainous and manipulative, and now people love T'Pring. We're sad that things don't go right for her and Spock. It seems like it's not necessarily bad decisions on anyone's part here, that they're all people of good faith, stumbling around a little bit, but sometimes moved by forces that are beyond them, so that things like sometimes just don't happen. Um, and so yeah, we've had several relationships, none of which really came to good fruition. Leon and Kirk didn't happen. Chapel and Spock didn't happen, and Spock and T'Pring are on pause. Is that everybody? Is that all the relationships?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Mbenga had to have had that
Oh,
daughter with
and
someone, but
and and
they never talk about they never talk about that.
Pike and Battelle were also brought up, and they were actually getting closer. But you could tell this is Father what I was talking about while you were off mic for a minute, which is that I think he is a guy who this it makes sense that Joanne pointed this out because of he knows his fate. But I also think it's clearly this is a guy who got to like his what 50s without having it seems like a he doesn't have any kids or like a committed relationship. I think I'm not going to say commitment phobe. I think he may just be a guy who's more comfortable with short
Well,
term
I think
relationships.
that's fair to say, but yeah,
But yeah, but like that's the kind of negative spin on it. Like some people may not just have that in them. And but he's been kind of inching up closer to it with Battelle than he has with anybody in a while. And I think that was also a pretty realistic depiction of even though it wasn't like, yeah, I kind of agree with you. They could have written her better, or given her more definition. But from what we saw of it, did it feel like, the kind of thing that was working out well and where he wanted to commit more to it, but was also struggling? Yeah, that all felt right. So yes, the theme of this season is romance doesn't work.
Well, I guess we'll see Chapel and Corby get together in season 3.
Yeah,
Um,
that's not destined to work either.
yeah, he's gonna die and get replaced by a robot.
But who did have a romance and sire a child successfully? Hemmer.
Did
Um,
he?
Gorn baby. Sorry,
But
I'm making more dark Hemmer jokes. I'm just
he
continuing to.
he killed his baby. He did like a suicide slash abortion.
All right, now you've made it too grim, fathery. I was just going to leave it unsaid and move on, and then you made it dark. Um, anyway, um, yeah, I suppose I hope this is maybe something now for season 3 that we see some of these that work out. Maybe Cybok and Captain Angel will be one of the ones that in its way works.
Yeah, yeah. Wouldn't that be cool if we actually get to like see that relationship?
I've been wanting it. That was what let's. It's like one of my big things I wanted in this season. I can wait for them to do it next season, but I think they should do it.
Um, yeah. I guess we're coming up at the end of the show. Any other big stuff you're hoping to get in season 3?
Oh
Since we didn't
man.
get Cybok this year, yeah, I think we both want him next year.
Yeah. When I think about it, like any given standalone episode, there's always things, there's almost always things I'd like to see followed up on or a character return. And I admit, like, I can see how, well, Angel feels like they are set up to be a recurring villain and
Hmm.
fun adversary. Cybok could have been just a throwaway line, but they showed him, and I'm like, man, that's like saying you want to do more with him. So that's going to be probably this. I can guarantee you, it will go on my list of what I want to see in season 3 when we do that formal list. Um, Beyond that, yeah, I don't know if I have anything specific. What about you?
Well, I still want the Tholians too, since we didn't get them in season
Yeah,
2.
and
But
some more TOS aliens
yeah,
and stuff
I
like
guess
that.
with the Gorn, I am curious where they eventually end up with the Gorn, but I'm not going to get too wrapped up in that until like we're approaching like the end of the lifespan of the show, and I don't think they're planning on season 3 being the ending. The ratings on the show have been too good in season
Yeah,
2, so we're already pretty heavily invested in Strange New Worlds, and I think the Paramount Plus execs now are probably, now that it is one of their rare things that cracks the Nielsen top 10, they're probably feeling a bit
yeah,
validated by
I
that.
bet.
So uh yeah,
Jill is agitating for Ston in the comments, by the
I
way, and
mean
I will agree.
we got a bit of Ston
Hmm.
in season 1, and he actually like gets like some screen time, like some, like he has like some dialogue. It's not just like the back of his head like Cybok. So
You know what? I
he
guess
he had he's already like ahead of Cybok. But
something is formulating in my mind of what I want in season 3, which is a little bit of how I kind of bristled against the kind of comedic Vulcan stuff in this one. I guess I want some deeper Vulcan stuff, not humorless, not devoid of energy, but a little bit deeper Vulcan culture. And I would, yes, that Ston could appear in that.
mm,
Cybok would be a great person to be showing, seeing some glimpses of Vulcan society. I like you, Fathery. I want some other aliens too, but yes, I think that would be too good to not show some more slightly deeper Vulcan culture. A little bit more like the kind of depth that we got in when they were first shown up in, say, Journey to Babel and Amok Time.
Cake is Eternal in the live audience is saying, "Don't jinx it. We need 5 seasons at least," and I think that's a safe bet. I think that we'll get at least 5 seasons of Strange New Worlds. I'd be surprised if they didn't, when they greenlit this show, if they didn't get Anson Mount locked down for a 5-year contract. That's pretty common. So I think that's a fairly safe bet. If whenever we get season 3 out, if it performs as well as season 2, then definitely.
Yeah, for sure. it seems like solid. It's nice when quality is rewarded. It's not always the case. Sometimes good shows get canceled. You never feel like completely safe, I suppose, in the streaming era. But looks like pretty solid. Looks
Yeah,
pretty
I mean
good.
the only things I've mentioned this several times, but the only things Paramount Plus has ever done out of like their entire library of their whole existence that's cracked the Nielsen top 10 is Taylor Sheridan shows,
Hmm.
and even that's too broad of an umbrella. It's just like one of the Yellowstone spinoffs. I think it's only like one show that's done it, but one
Right.
of them, and then Picard season 3 and Strange New Worlds.
Man,
So
that's
that bodes very well for Star Trek, especially for Strange New Worlds and the next live action show they do after the Academy. I think I don't know if it's going to be the Terry Matalas's Star Trek Legacy that he really 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 wants to make and keeps like talking about. But I think it's going to be something in that vein. It will be 25th century post Picard season 3, and more stuff with legacy people.
yeah. It's an era I think people would enjoy.
Was no, I guess 1923 was the Taylor Sheridan
Yeah,
show.
that's what
So
yeah Jill is telling us in the comments.
is
But
that the one with Harrison Ford or Kevin Costner?
yeah, man, I know these are pretty well received shows, but I've never gotten around to them. I tried Taylor Sheridan's show.
Okay, it is Harrison Ford. So
By the way, I took a peek at his show Lioness, which is kind of special ops stuff, and I
yeah,
was not feeling it, Fathery. I thought the writing was actually a little weak on it, a little almost conventional. Like better than maybe complete
I
average,
don't.
but a little conventional.
I've never watched any of his shows, so I don't know. But I mean, like that one, like the premise of it was not something I'd be interested in. So that show's already a lost cause for me. If it could have been written by, I don't know, the best writer ever, and I still probably wouldn't want to watch it. But
That's fair. I
uh,
was trying to tap into Dave, who enjoyed watching, those early Tom Clancy movies
yeah,
and all that, and see if I could do it. And for a variety of reasons, yeah, I found it wanting. But
yeah, I
anyway,
guess
yeah. So,
Harrison Ford, Anson Mount, and Patrick Stewart are like the three big money getters for Paramount Plus. So I guess
that's
unfortunate that it's
interesting.
like
Harrison Ford,
it's
Anson Mount, and Patrick Stewart. These are not young gentlemen. These are
yeah,
not like pretty boys.
old white guys I guess still rule the world.
Man,
It's
yeah.
probably gonna stay like that until I get old enough to be an old white guy, and then by then like history will have course corrected, and I'll get moved to like the bottom of the totem pole.
Someone's got to take the fall,
I
Father.
guess.
We've had a couple of centuries of being douchebag patriarchs. Um, the by the way, I don't know if we're how close you feel we are to wrapping up here, but I do have, of course, some subspace transmissions about hegemony. So just a heads up.
Yeah. Yeah, so before we end, I would again love to hear what people think about season 2 of Strange New Worlds. So y'all heard me and Dave yap about it for an hour and a half. Please comment on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. You can reply to my tweets on Twitter. I'll be asking about it, or you can tell us in the Discord server. Hopefully soon I'm gonna get engaged on some other social media platforms like Instagram and Blue Sky, and I need to actually like find time to set up these accounts. But we received some subspace transmissions on last week's season finale hegemony. So Dave, what were people's thoughts on that episode?
All right, sure. So first up, I got Wayne Voto says, "Hate a season-ending cliffhanger, but that episode was good." Lone Scum says, "Mostly very good. I'm pleased by how the show handles the gore and how they seem to flummox audiences and Pike alike. The Chapel Cayuga plotline was unfortunately badly handled with a major case of main character syndrome." Um, and Joanne Robertson, who we've been talking to in the comments tonight, says, "I love seeing the progression of the Gorn and the way Pike is trying to process his actions. I'm sure the whole quality of Mercy adventure is weighing on him this time and making him second guess his instincts. While I don't like cliffhangers, this ended in a good spot." So there's two people who are not like big into the cliffhanger thing, but saying, yeah, that episode came through. And I think that's all I've got. Just a few today.
Well, we'll be back next week, probably. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but we're currently in the process of trying to like make plans for Lower Decks season 4 because it's right around the corner, just what 2-3 weeks away, 3 weeks away. So, I think I'm going to be covering that with our friend Aaron, who's with us right now in the live audience, aka Geek Filter. So we're trying to cook up some ideas for how to go about that and some things to do kind of in the lead up to season 4, and also trying to get a guest back on the show soon. So make sure that you're subscribed, make sure that you're staying in the loop and following me on the socials and keeping up with Tex-Trek, and don't miss any of the stuff we got planned for y'all. And I think that we'll have a lot of fun going into next year and into the big final season of Discovery, and hopefully we'll see Prodigy somewhere. Prodigy season 2 # save Star Trek Prodigy. So got that to look forward to at some point in the near future as well. So, but this will be it for Strange New Worlds for a long time, probably until 2025. But I'm already looking forward to getting back to the Enterprise in the 23rd century. I'm a patient person, and we'll see what the show does next then.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, it's weird to be thinking about that. I have to think in a time scale more like Vulcan lifespans.
Well, everyone out there, behave and be kind, and come back soon for some Lower Deck season 4 coverage. And until next time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fathery on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.